two missiles, fired from Iran, targeted at the United Arab Emirates. One of them landed inside UAE territorial waters. That is not a skirmish. That is not a warning shot. That is Iran directly attacking one of the wealthiest and most strategically important countries in the Arab world, a country that hosts American military forces, a country that controls some of the world's most critical oil infrastructure, a country that has tried to stay out of this war since it began in February. And today, August 19th, 2026, that country just became a target. The UAE's air defenses detected both missiles. They intercepted what they could, but one missile made it through and landed inside UAE waters. And right now, every government in the Gulf region, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, is running the same calculation. If Iran will fire at the UAE, who is next? Stay with me. Because what just happened today changes everything about this war, and you need to understand exactly what it means and where it leads. Let us start with why the UAE matters so much in this conflict, because a lot of people watching from outside the region might not immediately understand the full weight of what just happened. The United Arab Emirates is not simply a neutral bystander in the Middle East. It hosts Al Dhafra Air Base, one of the most important American military installations in the entire region. Thousands of American troops are stationed there. American fighter jets, tanker aircraft, surveillance drones, all of them operate out of UAE soil. It is one of the key logistics hubs from which America has been projecting military power throughout this entire conflict. So when Iran fires missiles at the UAE today, it is not just attacking an Arab country, it is attacking the infrastructure that supports American military operations. It is sending a message directly to Washington. Every base you use, every partner you rely on, every country that hosts your forces is now within our reach, and we are willing to use that reach. That message is now being heard in every capital in the Gulf, and the response it triggers in the coming hours and days will determine whether this war expands into something far larger than anything we have seen so far. Now, let us put today's missile strike in the context of everything that has happened in the last 48 hours, because this did not come out of nowhere. Yesterday, Trump rejected an extension of the 60-day memorandum of understanding that was supposed to produce a peace deal between America and Iran. The deal deadline expired. No agreement was reached. And instead of proposing a new diplomatic framework, Trump threatened to bomb Oman, the neutral country trying to broker peace, and posted a map on social media labeling the Strait of Hormuz as American territory. Iran watched all of that happen, and today, less than 24 hours later, they fired 2 ballistic missiles at the UAE. Think about the sequence. America rejects diplomacy. America threatens a neutral mediator. America makes a territorial claim over international waters. Iran responds by hitting a Gulf Arab state that hosts American forces. This is not random. This is escalation responding to escalation, and the pace at which that cycle is accelerating is one of the most alarming things about the situation right now, because when actions and responses start happening within 24 hours of each other, the risk of a miscalculation that triggers something catastrophic goes up dramatically. Here is what Qatar's foreign ministry said today. And this is critically important. Qatar said that international mediators are waiting on a bilateral deal between Iran and Oman on the Strait of Hormuz before they return to push for broader U.S.-Iran talks. Read that again carefully. The mediators, the countries that have been working behind the scenes to bring America and Iran back to the table, are not coming back to those talks until Iran and Oman first finalize their own deal on the strait. Which means the diplomatic process that everyone was hoping would eventually produce a ceasefire is now dependent on an agreement between two countries, Iran and Oman, without direct American involvement. And Iran fired missiles at the UAE today while those negotiations are ongoing. What does that tell you? It tells you that Iran is running a two-track strategy simultaneously. On one track, quiet diplomacy through Oman, building a framework that gives Tehran what it wants in the strait. On the other track, military pressure through missile strikes, drone attacks, and proxy operations designed to raise the cost of continued American presence in the region. And both tracks are running at the same time. The missiles today are not inconsistent with the diplomacy. They are part of the same strategy. Hit hard enough on the military track that the diplomatic track produces concessions Tehran could not get at the negotiating table alone. Now let us talk about what the UAE missile strike means for the broader regional picture, because the ripple effects of what happened today are enormous. Saudi Arabia has been watching this war from a position of calculated distance. It has not officially joined the American coalition. It has not openly condemned Iran's actions. It has been trying to protect its oil infrastructure, its economy, and its people by staying out of the direct line of fire. But the UAE is Saudi Arabia's closest partner in the Gulf. They coordinate on economic policy, on security, on regional strategy. And if the UAE is now being hit by Iranian ballistic missiles, Saudi Arabia has to ask, are we next? The Houthi rebels in Yemen, who are backed by Iran, have been launching attacks against Saudi territory throughout this conflict. If Iran now feels emboldened enough to fire directly at the UAE, the threat to Saudi oil infrastructure becomes dramatically more serious. And if Saudi oil production is disrupted, even partially, the global economic consequences are catastrophic. Saudi Arabia produces roughly 10% of the world's oil. Any significant disruption to that production would send oil prices to levels that could trigger a global recession, and the UAE missile strike today brought that possibility one step closer to reality. Let me also tell you what is happening right now with the American military response, because this is where things get deeply complicated. America has thousands of troops stationed at Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE. Iran just fired missiles at UAE territory. Under any normal reading of alliance commitments, that would trigger an immediate and significant American military response. But here is the problem. America has burned through nearly 80% of its critical missile defense interceptors in this conflict. Its precision weapons stockpile is critically depleted. It is fighting a war it entered with 45 days of preparation against an opponent that spent 30 years preparing. And now that opponent has opened a new front, directly against the Gulf Arab states that provide the infrastructure America needs to keep fighting. So the question that American military planners are asking right now, in emergency meetings in the Pentagon, in CENTCOM headquarters, in the White House Situation Room, is not just how do we respond to this strike. It is how do we respond when we are running out of the weapons we need to respond effectively. And that question has no comfortable answer. In Part 2, I am going to walk you through what America's options actually are right now, why none of them are good, and what the next 72 hours could look like if this escalation continues at the pace it has been moving. Subscribe immediately and go to Part 2, because the next move in this war is the most consequential one yet. In Part 1, I walked you through what happened today. Iran fired 2 ballistic missiles at the United Arab Emirates. One landed inside UAE territorial waters. The UAE, a country hosting thousands of American troops, a country that has tried to stay out of this war, a country whose oil infrastructure supplies energy to half the world, hit by Iranian ballistic missiles today. And now, in Part 2, I am going to tell you something that the people in power in Washington do not want you to think about. America has no good options left, and I am going to prove that to you, step by step, using nothing but the facts of what has happened in this war over the past 6 months. Because when you lay them all out together, the weapons, the alliances, the diplomacy, the economics, what you see is a country that went to war without a plan for what comes after the first strike, and is now discovering, in real time, that wars without exit strategies do not end. They expand. Welcome to Part 2, and welcome to the most dangerous week of this entire conflict. Let us start with America's military options, because after Iran fires missiles at UAE territory, the pressure on the Trump administration to respond militarily is enormous. The domestic political cost of appearing weak, of watching a U.S. partner get hit by Iranian ballistic missiles and not responding, is very high. Trump has built his entire identity in this conflict around strength, dominance, and the idea that America's military power cannot be challenged. So the instinct, and you can be certain it is being expressed loudly in the White House right now, is to strike back hard, hit Iran, hit something significant, show the world that America responds to attacks on its partners. But here's the problem that every serious military analyst is staring at this morning. America has burned through nearly 80% of its Ta'adi ballistic missile interceptors. Fewer than 278 remain. The Patriot interceptor stockpile is critically low. Long-range precision missiles, the Army tactical missile systems, the precision strike missiles, most of them are gone, and Iran has 75% of its missile and drone capabilities still intact. So, if America launches a major new strike campaign in response to today's UAE attack, it does so with dramatically less firepower than it had 6 months ago, against an opponent that has been carefully preserving its most capable weapons for exactly this scenario. That is not a position from which you launch a decisive retaliatory strike. That is a position from which you risk escalating into a war you cannot sustain. And there is a second layer to this military problem that makes it even more complicated. The UAE hosts Al Dhafra Air Base, one of America's most critical military installations in the Middle East. Thousands of American troops, fighter jets, tanker aircraft, surveillance systems, all of it based on UAE soil. If Iran is now willing to fire ballistic missiles at the UAE, then Al Dhafra Air Base is a potential target. The Americans stationed there are now potentially in the crosshairs of Iranian missiles. And that changes the risk calculation for every American military operation in the region. Because operating from a base that could be hit by ballistic missiles at any moment is a fundamentally different military reality than operating from a secure rear area. The US military has excellent air defenses, but today one Iranian missile made it inside UAE territorial waters. The system is not impenetrable, and Iran knows exactly where Al Dhafra is. They have known for decades, and today they demonstrated they are willing to fire at UAE territory. The logical next step in that escalation, if America responds with major strikes, is Iran targeting the base directly, and that would mean American troops under direct ballistic missile attack on UAE soil, which would be the most serious escalation of this entire conflict. Now let us talk about the diplomatic situation, because today's missile strike happened in the middle of a diplomatic process that was already on life support. Qatar said this morning that international mediators are waiting for a bilateral Iran-Oman deal on the Strait of Hormuz before returning to broader US-Iran talks, which means the diplomatic path to ending this war now runs through two countries, Iran and Oman, and requires them to finalize their own agreement first before the larger negotiation can resume. And today, Iran fired missiles at the UAE while that process is ongoing. What does that do to the Oman-Iran deal? It creates enormous pressure on Oman. Because Oman is a small country sharing a coastline with the strait, it has been walking a careful line, maintaining relationships with Iran, maintaining relationships with the US, serving as the quiet diplomat that everyone trusted. But today, Iran fired missiles at a neighboring Gulf state, and Oman has to decide, does it continue mediating? Does it pull back? Does it signal to Iran that this kind of escalation makes diplomacy impossible? Those decisions are being made in Muscat right now, and the outcome will determine whether the diplomatic path to ending this war survives or collapses entirely. Let me now tell you about the economic shock that is coming, because what happened today in the UAE is not just a military and diplomatic story, it is an economic earthquake. The UAE is one of the world's largest oil producers. It is home to massive liquefied natural gas infrastructure. It is the financial hub of the Middle East. Dubai is where global capital, global trade, and global business converge for the entire region. Iranian missiles landing in UAE waters today sent an immediate message to every bank, every shipping company, every energy corporation, every investor with exposure to the Gulf region. The risk just went up, dramatically. Oil prices were already at their highest level since July yesterday. Today, they will go higher. Shipping insurance costs, which were already astronomical because of the Hormuz situation, will go higher still. And the businesses and governments that have been waiting to see whether the diplomatic process would produce a resolution before making permanent alternative arrangements, they are not waiting anymore, because today showed them that the conflict is not de-escalating, it is spreading, and capital moves fast when it moves away from risk. Here's the final thing I want you to understand about today, Omu, and it is the most important thing I will say in either part of this video. Wars expand when no one has the authority, the vision, or the political will to stop them. The US-Iran conflict started in February as a targeted air campaign against Iranian military sites. 6 months later, it has spread to the Strait of Hormuz, to Yemen, to Iraq, to Lebanon, to the UAE. Every ceasefire has broken down. Every diplomatic deadline has expired. Every neutral mediator has been threatened or pressured. And today, Iran fired ballistic missiles at a Gulf Arab state hosting American troops. The escalation ladder has rungs that nobody wanted to climb. And yet here we are, climbing them one by one. America has no good military options because its weapons stockpile is depleted. It has no good diplomatic options because its deal just expired and its mediators are under pressure. It has no good economic options because oil prices are rising and markets are repricing risk. And it has no good alliance options because it has been threatening partners and courting adversaries simultaneously. That is not a description of a country winning a war. It is a description of a country that started one without knowing how to finish it. And the people paying the price, the sailors at sea for 9 months, the troops at bases that are now potential targets, the families watching energy bills rise, the ordinary people in the Middle East caught in the middle of a conflict they never chose. They are the ones who will keep paying that price until someone in a position of power decides that the cost is finally too high. Comment below. Do you think America will strike back after today's UAE missile attack? Or does this force someone to finally sit down and make a deal? Subscribe, because this story is moving faster than ever, and you need to be here for every update.